Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good in between. Welcome back to Global Media Network, LLC, Educate, Enlighten, Entertain. You're appearing on Current State of Affairs on Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Two hosts, Viki Esther Chang from Singapore, Lillian Cauldwell from the infamous Reading Railroad in Pennsylvania. And today we're going to do a continuation from yesterday. Who came in and watched and listened to our program. Thank you very much. Please feel free to text us 484-364-1032 or send us an email at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com and let us know what's your state of current affairs wherever you are in this world, and tell us what you would like to hear, because it's more than just our perspectives on what's going on in this wide world of ours. So I will hand it over to Ms. Chang.
Hi, Lillian. This is 10:01 p.m. on a Tuesday evening on the 12th of November 2024. And you know what, Lillian? We are already at the end of the year. I mean, when we first met about our book, it was at the beginning of the year. I think it was January, or it was at the end of 2023. But you know, with just in a blink of an eye, or half a blink of an eye, we're at the end of the year. And I was just telling my husband, we are burning candles on both ends. Every day, it's more valuable for us. Every day seems to be closer to heaven, one step closer to the gates of hell or the gates of heaven. And I value every day of my life, Lillian. I value something like what we're doing for the world. State of current affairs, because in the digital world, I always say there's no time, there's no space. We are here forever. Long after we're gone, if the government do not take us off the air and cancel off all the digital data, we are here to stay even long after we're gone. So I really value the conversations we have, and I value the conversations that we have with our audience and with our listeners. You don't know how the sense of gratitude I have with the internet world and with our relationship and our relationship with the listeners and the audience, and leaving them a lot of questions after we leave, after we close the podcast, and after we're long gone in our lives. People are going to tune in to listen, and then they're going to unpack some of the things that we have said. So I really think that something like the state of current affairs, which is current in 2024, people are going to review later on in the future, whether it's 2025, 2026, or 2030, when they review back, hey, this is something that we talked about in 2024. We talked about, the past few couple of months, we talked about the environment, climate change, plastics. We talked about the environment. We talked about internal environment in your home, intoxication. We talked about women and children, women having children, women not having children. We talked a lot about different perspectives of the world, from Singapore and the US. So I do value that. And one more thing, even before I hand it back to you, I value so much more because we have this very dynamic viewpoint from the deep part of America, like Pennsylvania, and also Singapore. And Pennsylvania was the state whereby that was one of the important states for the election. I was looking at it. I know that. So you're going to unpack about the election. But one thing about a podcast like this, ladies and gentlemen, it is so valuable for people in this part of the world, in Asia, Indo-Pacific, Singapore, wherever you are, either you're in Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, or China, you wouldn't hear anything like what we talk. And I just want to let the listeners and the audience know, and even Lillian know, that a lot of these episodes will not make it to the podcast in Singapore, because either we're going to be canceled, or I'm going to be taken off air, or the Ministry of Home Affairs is going to call me up, because a lot of things can be sensitive and can be interpreted as sensitive. And therefore, I appreciate so much more because I am able to talk about this in Passionate World Talk Radio. If Lillian, you understand what I'm trying to say. A lot of things I will not even say or even breathe a single word. Because we need to be politically correct. Yes, we need to be so respectful. We need to be so sensitive. But sometimes being so respectful and so sensitive, it is so difficult to navigate a conversation. So it kind of makes us shut ourselves up. And there's so much self-censorship. And I think the people at this part of the world will understand what it means, because we are expected to just put our heads down and work. Put our heads down, shut your mouth, do not be visible. You are seen and you're not heard. You are told from day one when you're born. So I do appreciate the kind of freedom of exchange. And I think if the listeners and the audience understand that, a lot of times I kind of still hold back in my conversation, but I do want to have a conversation with Lillian, because Lillian can speak very, very freely, and I'm kind of like at the side thinking, hey, I can't say that in my podcast. But I appreciate the fact that I understand what the rights of freedom is. A lot of people do not understand that. And when I started to live in Europe, I understand what they meant by your human rights. And I will talk about that in the future when we have our future episodes about my understanding of human rights, or my understanding of non-human rights in certain parts of the world. So again, ladies and gentlemen, if you are listening in China, in Indo-Pacific, in Asia, any part of the world, you would appreciate a show like the State of Current Affairs. And please do uphold that freedom to write to us via email to Lillian Cauldwell, to her at her email, or comment below, because this is a right that you have, and a right to your own opinion, with respect to being sensitive to your neighbors. But you will have to understand, you have a right as a worker, you have a right as a woman, you have a right as a person, as a human, as a voter, and you have a right to your own mind. I think that's very important. Whether you speak it or not, you have a right to your intellect, and not being brainwashed. I think that's so important. So having said that, but I think the last 10 minutes, I think is so important for our listeners and the viewers, wherever you are, because we have a good percentage of our listeners from another part of the world, not in the US. So they will understand what I am talking about when we are told not to speak. We are told that we should not be speaking. We are told to just bury our heads and work for the corporation or work for the community. So I do appreciate a show like this, State of Current Affairs. So now let's go over to Lillian. Thank you so much, Lillian, and take over from here. Just unpack whatever thing that's in your mind, Lillian.
Thank you. Well, this is Lillian Cauldwell, and I am an entrepreneur, as everybody knows. And basically, I do own an operated internet talk radio station. And because we still have freedom of speech here, it may disappear in 2025, so we'll have to see what happens next. But for right now, I do have freedom of speech. And with this freedom, we intend to keep on expressing our opinions and share what we know. Now, you are more than welcome to text me at 484-364-1032 and say, Lillian, I disagree. And if you give me your email, I will send you an invitation, and you can come and join us and get your opinion or your perspective known. That is, if you have the guts to stand up and be counted. And not everybody has that, and you don't have to have that, but this is your opportunity to get it out once and for all. I will tell you that yesterday we had a bad There are two topics on a week after Donald Trump was reelected to become president once again. Right out of the gate, we had 41 views, which for us is very, very good. We would have made half at 50. I'm just really excited. So if you want to be a part of PWTRN and GDM, Metropolis Education Publication Production, and you want to be part of our history, then text us once again at 484-364-1032 and let us know that you would like to be on the show. Even if it's in 3 minutes, you'd be surprised what you can get accomplished in 90 seconds. Seriously. All you have to do is watch the revolutionaries at work and see what kind of a tempest they can stir up in 60 seconds. They use a lot of verbs, and that's what you need to use as well. Get rid of the adjectives, yes, and the adverbs you don't need. Action verbs work, and they work because they provide an action and a reaction. Sort of like the atomic bomb that everybody keeps threatening everybody's with. Okay, so Donald Trump was reelected, and depending what news outlet one reads, either on the internet or on paper, because they're still using paper these days, he either, what they call, said everything that people wanted to hear, and he put a lot of untruths or fantasy fiction, or he really was reelected on his merits. I did not vote for him. I am proud to say that. I was not bribed. I did not take $1 million from Elon Musk, even though I lived in Pennsylvania. Apparently, he stays away from the old age homes and communities. Donald Trump got most of his votes from the blue-collar Latino, what we call Hispanics in this country, the working blue-collar workers, because he promised them the sun, the moon, and the stars. We usually call it the first 100 days. We also know that on his first day, he's going to do a mass deportation from all over the United States, and he's not going to recognize the individual state's authority at all, but he's going to bulldoze what I want to know, going to get the funding from. I can't afford to send every single alien, as he calls them, back across the border. Maybe he can, and his cronies can, because this is a very wealthy administration. And he is rewarding his wealthiest patrons who put him back into the seat of power by giving them jobs that, in my opinion, he has no business giving them to, because they won't do anything. They don't have the slightest idea about humanity. And they're governing people. Although in the secret plan, which apparently is very right-wing, he has going to declare himself dictator for life, with his family in position to inherit his power. Gee, that sounds more like North Korea than it does the United States. In fact, I don't think the states will be united at all. In fact, I think some of them may start seceding from the Union. And that would be interesting as well to see what happens. I don't think we need to wait for Putin.
Can I have like two questions?
Certainly.
Two questions from the outside world to
Certainly.
question, because we're not in there. We don't understand. I mean, for example, you can take me. You can tell me that the apple is so sweet, but if I have not tasted the apple, I wouldn't understand what it means by sweet or how sweet it is. So, because you mentioned about fascism, number one, I want you to define that for us here outside. What it means historically and what you see in Donald Trump, and then what it will happen to the country if it's ruled by someone who is a fascist. Okay. Number two, the next question is we talked about the police, the American police, right? A lot of people are against the power of the police. We read that the Democrats will say that, okay, a lot of people are about defunding the police. And then a lot of people say, I think the Republicans were saying that you need to fund the police or give them more power. Why is that? So why is that a huge issue of contention? Because we don't live there. Tell us these two issues that stand out a lot that we don't understand, Lillian. Did you get me, Lillian?
I think, yeah,
Did you get
we're
me?
fine. To answer your first question, Donald Trump was indicted in New York City and found guilty of 34 out of 36 accounts of secretly spending money to keep people quiet. One of the judges he has appointed is going to exonerate him and pardon him and give him immunity. Fascists are people who believe they're above the law. They're special. They're smarter, they're brighter, they're more attractive, and therefore they should be accorded special privileges. His heroes are Putin, the North Korean dictator, Hitler, Stalin, Napoleon. Think about what all these people have in common. Power. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. I mean, the French people and the guillotine, and how many people did they kill? And look who they landed up with. Another dictator, Napoleon, emperor. King wasn't good enough. He had to be emperor. And he put his whole family in the power positions all over Europe. And he had to conquer the world. But Russia was his downfall. Germany set out to conquer the world and to establish a 1,000-year reign. Russia, again, was their downfall. Putin has threatened to bomb the United States, but Putin has inflation in his country. He has fires in his country. He invited the North Korean troops to come into the Ukraine and help him win the war. Apparently, the North Korean soldiers did not shine. Apparently, they were overwhelmed by the Ukrainians and they lost heavily. Ironic? Maybe. And then, of course, the North Korean dictator himself is being disposed. So what am I saying? During the election, a secret plan was discovered of a document written up for the potential Donald Trump, and it declared fascism was going to be meant that the president would have not be regulated. Nobody could say no to him. Whatever he wanted to do, he could do. And that's not what the president and how it was set up. George Washington was offered to become king after the Revolutionary War, and he said no. He would become its president, but not a king. He wasn't looking for absolute power. President Donald Trump is looking for absolute power. He wants to get rid of his enemies. He does not believe people have the right or the freedom to criticize him. And if they do, he will either imprison them or shoot them. Does that sound like the United States? No. He's already making a hit list of all the people he wants to get rid of. Those people who rioted and invaded the Capitol in Washington, D.C., he's going to pardon every single one of them, and he's going to pardon himself. Only dictators do that. They have that right, you see. Their people who put them into office do not recognize the danger that they're in. I'm a student of history. I know what happens to all the supporters who are there to do the dirty work for the emperor. They do not last very long. Take a look at Peter the Great, and he was a great man, but he also killed his own son because his son was in opposition to how he did things. Elizabeth the Great killed Mary Queen of Scots and carried that shame with her for the rest of her life. She had to do it, but she also knew it was wrong. Why? Because Mary Queen of Scots was royal, and you do not kill another royal person. Not because she was a good woman, not because she was smart, but she wanted the throne and crown of England. And so Elizabeth's prime minister decided she had to go. So he tricked her into signing a death warrant. And she regretted it for the rest of her life. Well, at least she had a conscience. I don't think Donald Trump has a conscience. I think Donald Trump is a spoiled little boy. And when he can't get what he wants, he throws temper tantrums. And now the police department was settled after the military. The idea being that they would enforce the law. Well, Hitler enforced the law too with his brown troops and his black troops and with the stormtroopers. Their job was to get rid of undesirables and people who make trouble. Donald Trump has a list. Israel doesn't know it. But Donald Trump is not their answer. He is also against anybody who is not white and have blue eyes. Where have we heard that before? And when you inbreed, look what it produces. All you have to do is take a look at the royalty in Europe and Asia. However, I digress. I believe that, like Biden said, whether you like it or not, the American people have spoken, and they want to put Trump back into office. It doesn't matter whether he lied, exaggerated the truth, he was put back into office. And the idea of leaving my country because there's one bad apple in the bunch is not the answer either.
So, Lillian, I've got a question that is like really kind of like I need to understand a little bit. Does it mean that simply said, and I may be absolutely wrong, and because Donald Trump is seen as the white supremacist, for example, and he wants to give the power to the police because there is certain element of wanting to get rid of colored people because colored people are of lesser um, um, of a lesser status, for example. Does it mean that because of that, the police force that is directly empowered by Donald Trump gives them that um, kind of uncontrolled power of the police as an individual to go out to unconsciously discriminate people who are colored and put them, or I would say that try to incriminate colored people more so than if Donald Trump is not elected. If you know what I'm trying to say.
Donald Trump told the United States that if he lost the election, he would go to war. In other words, he would win at all costs, whether he really won or not. He did win by a large majority, no doubt about it. He may have won on real or imagined information. The jury's still out. But he did have a plan already written down saying what he would do and how he would do it. If he wants to use the military to control the population. He sees nothing wrong with having armed troops in the streets the way it is in certain parts of Europe and Asia. I got the heebie-jeebies when the National Guard was in the airport. That was one of the reasons why we separated from England. And so he's putting us all back 350 years. But worse, he believes that women who can produce children between the ages of 15 and 30 something should stay home and have children to make up for the white population. He's not the first person to do this. When you give a person power, in the United States, they had put limits on the amount of power the president would have, and he is stripping down those powers. He believes in getting rid of the Constitution. The Constitution is a legal document put together by our forefathers, or so history goes, to put restrictions on power because they understood from living in Europe just how badly one man can abuse their power. The French had the Revolutionary War. Even in Asia, among China and Japan and the Philippines, they've all had their rebellions and revolutions because of one single power. But they always exchange it for another with an emperor. In Russia, they killed the royalty and ended up with a dictator. In South America, elected presidents were put in, but they became dictators. And so it goes. And in most of the Oriental countries, it's still royalty. So I don't know whether there is a solution. Most of our science fiction that has been written either reverts to fascism or a form of communism or totalitarian government, or they revert back to royalty and emperors. Nowhere in any science fiction book that has been put out by Americans, have I ever seen a democratic process succeed? Even in the so-called Star Trek and Star Wars, they revert back to royalty. So apparently, royalty and dictators are what our behavior indicates that will happen to everybody. And I may remind everyone that even a utopia, you are not free. Everybody has to be like everybody else and follow certain rules, which means you have to give up your individual freedom. And unfortunately, I have spoken way too much, and we need to wrap up the program. Viki, is there anything you would like to add before we close it down?
I'm gonna do a few questions whereby you're just gonna give me like a few answers. A quick answer is like a fire question time. Okay. Would you see, yes or no, would you see more racism now?
Yes.
Okay. Would you see more jobs?
I do not see it.
Okay.
What?
Would you see more difficult times in
Yes.
terms of, okay,
Yes.
and how are they difficult times?
For the people who are retired and depend on Social Security, they're getting slammed.
Will there be more
Let me put it this way, they're already talking about food shortages.
yeah. Would you see more will you see more violence in the streets?
Yes.
Will there be would you see there be more policies to clean up the streets, as in the drugs that is in the street, homelessness that's in the street? I mean, you see that people are really like in different parts of America, that drugs are just in the streets and people are just like, it's just apocalypse. So
It's
do
going to
you
be
see
like
that?
Rome. It's going to be like the Roman Empire.
Would you see more of that, or would you see that being
Yes,
cleaned up?
absolutely. Especially if they strip the states of their rights. And whatever Donald Trump says, everybody has got to do. Because they're already telling the governors about, don't try to stop the deportation, that we're coming to pick up these people because we will just bulldoze you.
Okay. Yeah. I probably have got more questions as I, you know, kind of follow through the current affairs in the U.S. So I think for now, um, this is it for me.
This is it. I have one thing to add before we close it down. They are telling the citizens of the United States to watch out that foreign corporations and governments are going to flock to the United States and buy out whatever China and Japan has not already bought. That there's going to be a huge influx of foreign money in this country.
Do you buy that, or it
Yes,
is happening?
Japan was first, and then China came in. And I'm curious to see how Donald Trump is going to respond to China saying, we're calling in our loan.
Okay. Yeah, because China is actually owning the debt of America, and
They bought
in
us out a
trillions
long
and
time ago.
trillions.
And I am curious to see how many people he's going to throw, all the citizens, of who he's going to throw under the bus to satisfy the Chinese.
So that's it I have for today.
Okay. Please think of more, and we will resume this next week. This is an ongoing conversation, folks. Please write us, PWR Network LLC at gmail.com, or text us at 484-364-1032. This is our world. We're all in it together. If one of us falls, the rest of us will fall as well. We depend on each other's about it. For joining us this evening and this morning, go over to passionateworldtalkradio.com. Scroll down until you come to State of Current Affairs. Click on it. Takes you to a page. Go below the comment form, and you'll see a Google link. Click on it, and it'll take you right to YouTube to hear this video all over again, plus all our other video podcasts. Or go to youtube.com/@PassionateWorldRadio, facebook.com/PassionateWorldRadio, linkedin.com/Lillian Cauldwell. If you want to learn how to do a podcast like this or any other podcast in any industry, go over to education.passionateworldtalkradio.com/masterclass. Sign up, bring a friend. 2 for the price of 1. Ends December 31st, 2024. Also, you want to get your memoirs out, contact us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com. Name, what you want to do, how you want to get it out, and Viki and I will get you set up so you can share your expertise and experience to the rest of the world. They are eagerly awaiting to hear what you have to say, and what you have to say is important. Also, stuck? Want some help? Whether you like it or not, artificial intelligence has been let out of Pandora's box. Go over to AIwithlillian.com, take a test run, sign up for the monthly subscription, 20, 35, 55, 100. It's a no-brainer. Sign up, contact us, and we'll get you all set up. Anything else you'd like to add?
Lillian, just for the listeners and the viewers, we already have our book, Gold Nuggets for Podcasts, Gold Nuggets for Digital Strategies, Podcast for Business and You, out in Amazon. Please look this up. And also, we're coming up with Gold Nuggets Communications as Superpower. Next, also, we are going to have our weekly training on as a webinar. If you remember, we said that probably from the month of December as a vacation holiday program. So we will be rolling that out. I think we spoke about that, but it's not out, but it's going to be out in December. So ladies and gentlemen, our book is already out in Amazon. That is Gold Nuggets for Digital Strategies, Podcast for Business and You. And also we're come out, our book is going to be out, be launched soon. Gold Nuggets, Communications as Your Superpower. And also another one that is a training in December.
One other thing, if you like what you hear and you want to become more involved with State of Current Affairs, we are accepting sponsors. Think about it. You have an opinion, you have a belief, you're willing to stand up and let your voice be heard. Contact us, pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com, or text us, 484-364-1032. What's your advantage? If you can get 41 views in a space of 1 hour after that podcast just aired, would that help your company? I bet it would, especially since social media is king and video and audio is its consort. Thank you all very much for listening and have an awesome week.